The University of Johannesburg, the future reimagined.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the University of Johannesburg Library Podcast Studio. Today we've got our distinguished guest, Baki Chatanya Swami. I'm with my co-host, Dinesh. Dinesh, would you like to actually introduce yourself as well?
Good morning, Cabello. Thank you for the opportunity to run this podcast series. So today is the first podcast. I personally head up the Bhakti Yoga Society at the University of Johannesburg. And currently we're running something very exciting for the students, which is an advanced mindfulness and science of self-realization course.
Great. Thank you for that, Dinesh. Maybe I just want to share with the audience a little bit about you on your bio, Dinesh. Dinesh is the head of Bhakti Yoga Society at the UJ, at the University of Johannesburg, should I say. He's a mindfulness coach, consulting with many international companies, MBA from Henley Business School, For me to just share also with Bhakti Chatanya Swami, also bio, is that he's from originally from Auckland in New Zealand. His bio reads like this: Bhakti yoga practitioner and a teacher for 50 years. Travels the world extensively, teaching the philosophy of Bhakti Yoga and mantra meditation in America, Europe, and the UK and India. Mr. Bhakti, how are you doing, sir?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Thanks very much, Cabello. I'm really happy to be here. Thanks very much for having me. And yeah, it's very interesting subjects. I'm really enthusiastic to hear what questions you have for me to clarify.
Yeah, it's great. Quickly, Dinesh, I'm going to run through two questions with you just before I'm going to jump into putting out and outlining all the questions that we've prepared for our distinguished guest. My first question to you, Dinesh, is that what exactly is mindfulness and how does it relate to the university life?
Thank you for the question, Cabello. So in essence, mindfulness means to be present in the moment. So a study was done by the British government or the UK government through many companies within the country, and they established through some research that people were taking off from work due to mental illness as opposed to physical illness. So this study established that mental illness was a real problem. And mindfulness is a holistic approach to help solve these problems. So if we consider now the university life of students, we can understand that this type of problem is not related specifically to corporate organizations, employees and staff, but also to university students as well.
That's really profound and wonderful to hear that you actually doing such wonders for the university life, especially for the students. And I think and I do believe that they need this in the utmost. My second question to you is, why is mindfulness important to the university students?
Well, Cabello, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
In your view, what challenges do students experience in their day-to-day life?
I think one of them is hunger. That's one thing I'm going to mention to you. And I'm going to just speak on perspective of being a student as well, because I was a student within the university. I think the other could be stress, which drastically contributes to our life, because you've got maybe 4 modules that you need to study for. You've got 4 exams, and everything is just pressed up within a short period of time. And as a person, you're unable to actually, articulate all this information at the same time. And it tends to actually take away how you're supposed to actually behave and take away the utmost potential that you have as a student. And at the moment, I don't have any other ones, but I think if I were to put another comment, was that one thing that also brings students to not perform well is the pressure and the society that is existing within the university. You get variety of people within the university. You get diverse of people. So for that, you will find students that are coming from originally comfortable families that are able to sustain their lives, and mixed with those that grow up struggling. And that tends to actually interfere with those that are not doing well, because now you end up focusing on getting yourself clean, buying yourself nice shoes, looking all lovely, and forgetting the most important, outmost reason why you're in the university, which is, getting your qualification and finishing it on time. Yeah.
Thank you for that most valuable input. Obviously, you being a former student, you would understand the day-to-day challenges experienced. So, interestingly enough, having been part of the Bhakti Yoga Society at UJ for about 12 years here now, so some of the challenges that I see students experiencing is your depression, loneliness, stress, anxiety.
Yes.
So there's many other problems as well, but these are the fundamental problems. So mindfulness has the wonderful techniques to help the student deal with these day-to-day challenges.
Great.
And in fact, not only day-to-day challenges, but it actually harnesses an individual, provided they practice the mindfulness techniques.
Yeah.
It harnesses them to actually tackle this throughout their life. So it's not a temporary presentation. And some of the techniques that we actually cover is breath work, meditation, mantra meditation, visualization techniques, philosophy. And one of our wonderful offerings at the Bhakti Yoga Society, we give the students sanctified vegetarian food.
Oh, great. This is quite wonderful and very helpful. And I think you just need to continue with it. And whoever you get your support from, and I would like to say to them, keep on doing the great work that you're doing and continue with it.
Thank you.
It's quite lovely for you, for us as the university, to be having such a person with you.
Thank you,
in
Kabelo.
the premises. Coming to you, our distinguished guest, if I were to ask you, what are the differences between consciousness and subconsciousness, and subconsciousness, and how can they influence our behavior and decision making?
Yes, okay, Cabello, that's a very interesting question, very important question. We talk about consciousness, just literally consciousness means to be conscious, to be aware. And as Dinesh was saying about mindfulness, being present, being here now, as opposed to being off, somewhere else. It's very important for students. It's important for everyone.
Yeah.
But it's important for students to focus on their studies and learn the valuable information which is available to them, and to be able to focus on it and not get distracted by different things, including their own personal problems, but like social situations, intoxication, and things like this, which really distract. So the conscious mind, of course we're going into the field of psychology here, but the conscious mind is what we are thinking now. If I'm thinking of this, if I'm thinking of that, if you're studying, for example, engineering, civil engineering just as an example, you have to focus on all the different rules and regulations and formulae, etc., for civil engineering, and not get distracted into like your own problems, for one thing, but just the situation at a university. I was also at university in Auckland, New Zealand, more than 50 years ago, long time ago. It was the same sort of thing. A lot of dukkha around, and a lot of parties and all this sort of thing. Boys and girls getting together. I mean, that's okay, that's important, but I mean, the dukkha is not so important. But the thing is, when you're at the university, you got to be aware, you got to be conscious of what you're studying and really get into it and make the most of it. When we talk of subconscious, the subconscious element in our consciousness, it's multifaceted, actually. For example, children are born and there's already some sort of type of mentality they have even at the time of birth and just immediately after, as they, like the first year. Some children are naturally more happy, more sort of gentle, more peaceful. Some are more wild. It's something which is already programmed into their consciousness. So where do these things come from? Well, in the science of self-realization, there's the possibility, the idea, they may come even from a previous life, or they may just come from God. But, for children to have mentalities like that, just right from birth before they've been exposed to situations which may stimulate different emotions, it's a very interesting question. Where do these attitudes and emotional states come from? But anyway, just to be very sort of down to earth and practical, the subconscious mind, in very simple terms, is what's stored there generally from our previous experiences, what we've been exposed to in life, which we're not really using right now. Like you're a student, you've got to use your consciousness to focus on your whatever course you're taking. Yeah, so like habits, emotional tendencies. Some people are prone to get angry more easily. Some are just more relaxed. This is coming from deeper in our psychological, emotional system. And mindfulness, as such, as Dinesh was saying, it involves, there are different practices, but the idea, or one of the foundational ideas, is to get a grip on what is there in the background of your mind from your experiences and your habits and so on, and get it under control so it doesn't push you in the wrong directions. Like if you're meant to be studying and there's some difficulty, it's not easy to study in university. You've got to really apply yourself.
Yes.
So, but if you've got a tendency to become frustrated too easily, then you'll struggle more with your studies.
Yes.
You may even drop out if you're just too easily affected by some challenges. So the subconscious mind is where all these deeper tendencies are lying, like the tendency towards anger, pride, and things like this. They're deeper in our conscious mind. They're sort of stored up from our experiences, and we've got to be careful that they don't just come up and flare up and inhibit our actual conscious thinking, concentration on what we're really meant to be doing. So, this is what I really focus on myself. One of the main areas when I'm trying to teach people is how to keep your conscious mind sort of clean, you could say, and not let it get infiltrated by negativity or whatever which may come up from the past, which is stored in your psychological system. And in that way, deal with life as it is, in terms of the position you're in, to make the most of your situation, make the most of your life, and not get sort of hung up and bewildered by lower tendencies, which are there like in the back of your mind. So these are some thoughts on the subject. The difference between conscious and subconscious mind.
Okay. That's a very mouthful and insightful words you've just instilled us with, Mr. Bhakti. I've got another question for you, touching at some conscious and mind. Just to clarify to our audience quickly, when we talk about some conscious, subconscious mind, we're talking about things that exist already in your mind but you're not aware of.
Basically, yeah.
And with conscious mind is things that exist that you're already aware that you need to do. It could be mainly basic tasks that you planned to do on for the day. Those are conscious mind things that you have in your mind.
Right.
Touching on those two, can you recommend any techniques for us to be able to control this mind that we have?
Sure. You know, this whole seminar, which Dinesh is putting together and will be presented over the next few weeks, it's going to go into detail about this. But we can start by, the mind. We have to sort of tame the mind. The mind has the tendency to run off like an animal.
Uh-huh.
When you've got, say, a dog, which is your pet and you've been looking after, they stick with you. But some other dog, which is not your dog, you try and call the dog won't come, and the dog won't deal with you. So the mind can be like that, sort of like an animal, and we have to get the confidence of the mind and get control of the mind. Now, Dinesh mentioned mantra meditation. This is a very important activity for getting like a handle on the mind. In that spiritual sound vibration, it's like a medicine, you could say, for the mind, as opposed to like if you get sick and you take some antibiotics or whatever it may be, some medicine like that. So the spiritual sound vibration, it smooths out the sort of the kinks and the rough edges in our conscious thinking, so that it's easier to address the conscious mind and get it and keep it focused on what we want it to be focused on. So mantra meditation is very useful, and thousands and actually millions of people just over even just the last, say, 20 years or so have practiced mantra meditation and found that it really helped them focus their minds. Mantra meditation will give you the strength to tell your mind, listen, don't just dream off about, what are we going to do this weekend, or what did we do last weekend, or what is the latest song I heard on the radio, something like that. It'll give us the strength to tell the mind, listen. I've got to do this assignment. I've got a test coming up shortly. I've got to be ready. I got to focus on very specific information.
Yeah.
And the mind will then do it. Instead of if you just tell your mind, gee, we got to study now, but then a minute later the mind's off somewhere else. Yeah. That's a recipe for serious problems for a student. So mantra meditation as just one aspect of the program of developing increasing mindfulness, a mantra meditation is very useful, very, very effective. Spiritual sound vibration, which is more powerful and more pure and more cleansing for the mind than just what you hear on television, etc., like that, the music, the songs that are coming out. So that's a very important part. And I don't want to steal Dinesh's thunder by going into too many of the different things he'll be focusing on. Yeah. But for me, in my practice for the last 51 years, actually a little more, I've found the mantra meditation to be really such a key for success in getting what you've got to do done well. Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Thank you for that as well. Our audience, as you just heard, the most important thing here, I just learned and picked up from our distinguished guest, is that training is important. Training your mind is important. He made an example with a dog. For a dog to be able to obey your rules and how you want it to behave within your premises, it goes through training from when it's still young. So if I'm correct, you might correct me if I'm not, the mind also works the same way. You need to train your mind for it to be able to operate optimally and in the correct way you want it to work.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good, yeah.
My last question to you is that what is the journey of self-discovery, of the science of self-realization?
Yeah, well, you know, in our school of Bhakti Yoga and yoga in general, which Dinesh is also an expert on, you know, the thing is that we really have to, well, it sounds a bit esoteric, but according to the school of yoga in the very broad sense, there are many types of yoga, that we are actually eternal spiritual persons. We have these temporary bodies and the state of mind which, you know, develops during the course of our life.
Yeah.
So, you know, there are eternal values which we must encourage within ourselves and try to display for others to see, and so they appreciate the value of them. You know, like, for example, I remember one of the first things I remember when I was a child, I remember my first day at school. I was 5. In New Zealand, you start school at 5. So there I was, first day in school. It really wasn't easy, being separated from my mother. So I had a certain state of mind. Here I am now more than 70, or about 70 years later. And that sort of attitude, you know, like the tendency to feel, you know, where's my mother that I had as a child? It's not there at all. So, and my body, of course, my body is aged, but my mind has developed and changed in many ways, intellectually, emotionally, things which would have been difficult to handle, like separation from my mother. There's it's nothing now. So, but in the middle of all that, there's me, the person. And so this is the body of the person. This is now the mind of the person. The body has changed, the mind has changed, but I'm still the same person. If you follow the idea, I'm not a different, the actual entity, the unit of person is the same. So this, you know, if we can develop this type of awareness, this type of consciousness, then it gives a very deep type of stability in our lives. Because, you know, our lives on the sort of everyday level, there's fluctuation in our relationships, in our work, in our studying. There's fluctuations of different types which can destabilize without too much difficulty. They can destabilize. But if you've got a really deep and profound and strong sense of fundamental, foundational identity, then even though life and the world around you may sort of spin around in so many ways, and, you know, even sometimes there may be like disasters, tragedies, and just, you know, really way out things. But if you've got this strong sense of identity beyond just the everyday, this gives great stability. And it's a really good foundation for developing mindfulness.
What a mindful wit and wisdom from you, Mr. Bhakti. For our listeners, I think for the most important things that we need to take away today's podcast is that for you to get self-realization, you need to be very mindful. And being mindful goes through a process. And as our distinguished guest and Dinesh have explained, it's not something you can wake up thinking tomorrow that you know yourself quite well. You need to be able to go through training. You need to be able to understand your subconsciousness and your consciousness for you to actually start saying to yourself, I know who I am. Because basically, a lot of us walking around here, we tend to believe we really know who we are, but we haven't even tapped into our subconsciousness mind. Dinesh, do you have any closing remarks or last comment that you want to make?
Kabelo, so I think from a practical sense, okay, using an example for a university student. So if you are able to focus the mind, be mindful of the moment, and we'll use the classic example where a student is studying and preparing for an exam. So if you focus on that moment, you're able to concentrate on your studies. Your mind is not darting here and there. Because the mind is so powerful, in a moment it can be in New York City. How long will it take the body to get there?
Oh, can imagine.
Right. So if you can actually focus and be in the moment, you'll be able to absorb what you are studying. Now, if we consider a lot of students' situations, when it comes to exam time, they're stressing, right? Because they haven't adequately prepared.
Exactly.
But if you're mindful in the moment and you're doing what's required for the day and you are absorbing what you are studying, when it comes to the exam time, will you be stressed out?
Never.
Will you be concerned?
I'll definitely be excited to go and write that exam.
Wonderful. So with mindfulness, what is an important element is daily practice. Right? Daily practice. So episode 2, we'll dive more into mind control and mental wellness.
Great.
And we'll start speaking about daily practice.
Great.
Thank you.
Any last remarks, Mr. Bhakti?
Well, I think this has been a very worthwhile session we've had together. And I think it can benefit the students tremendously if they try to take in what we've said. My main point would be get into some of the mantra meditation. That'll strengthen your foundation. So as Dinesh was saying just right now, when the exam comes up, if you're together, you're not going to be stressed at all. You'll take it in your stride. And because the stress is another thing you're conscious of. Your consciousness becomes absorbed in the stress and spinning around. But we keep our minds out of that, in the subject, in the moment, and your results will be better. And you'll feel so much better about how you're living, how you're studying, and who you are as a person.
Great. Yes, you may go through, Dinesh. I see you've got one last comment.
So those were some wonderful words from Bhakti Chaitanya Swami. And just to give some backing to what he said. So last year we introduced the mantra meditation to the students. And students that started practicing this mantra meditation daily, they mentioned that they moved from a C grade to A grade in a few weeks.
Imagine.
They were struggling academically, but with the introduction of the mantra meditation, their memory increased. They were able to focus, and that enabled them to achieve very high results and success.
Great. This is very, very fruitful for our students, and I hope our audiences are actually taking notes on this and making sure that they listen to this podcast studio. And yes, as Dinesh mentioned, we've got a second episode coming. We're going to be recording the second episode next week. Be on the lookout for it. This is University of Johannesburg podcast studio. This is UJ Talks podcast sessions that we're having, and it's a series of podcast sessions that we're having with Dinesh. Thank you very much, Mr. Bhakti Chaitanya Swami.
Thank you, Kabelo.
Thank you, Dinesh.
Thank you.
The University of Johannesburg, the future reimagined.